Hey, everybody, welcome to our weekly Bible reading check in. I'm Andrew, this is Mike, and we're reading the Bible twice in 2026, and we are coming down to the end of the Old Testament, which is a milestone. I don't know if everybody just take a minute,
It's a big deal.
reflect on the fact that you did it. You've done the hardest part.
Yeah, it's a big deal. Everything else is going to feel like, what? It's going to be harder for us too to talk about everything.
Yeah.
It's going to go so fast, but
It's going to go fast because the books are going to be shorter. Even the Gospels, like the
Right.
Gospels are going to be. I mean, they're
Right.
long, but they're shorter than some of the books we've just read, and they're going to be so familiar to
Right.
us. I think for a lot of people. So we got to just talk about before we close the Old Testament. We've got to talk about this last collection of books, which we typically call the Minor Prophets. And Mike, why are they called Minor Prophets?
I think because they wrote less
They-
than everyone else.
Okay.
Though some have more chapters than Daniel, but
A
I
few.
think it's smaller.
Yeah. So, just to clear up any confusion, I think we've said this in the last several
Yeah.
videos, so
Yeah, we have.
should be no confusion. These are not less important books; they're just shorter books. And
So yeah, major and minor is probably not the greatest terminology. The Hebrews put it in their own book called the Book of the 12.
yeah. So let's start there because I think we're not going to have the time to go talk about any of these books in depth.
No.
Although there are some books that maybe people are more familiar with. We've got Jonah. Which is a memorable story. Maybe even Hosea to a lesser extent. People might have that one plugged away. But we don't have the time to talk about all these in detail. So we should know going into this that the Hebrews did, all of these books were in one scroll, and it was called the Book or the Scroll of the 12. And so just sort of an interesting fun fact, these books were not always read. They were understood to be written by different prophets, but they were read in one collection. So it's almost more of an anthology, it's like a collection of different stories, than really separate documents.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you might wonder, like, we would have probably inserted them into the history, right?
Yeah. Where do these go in the history?
And sometimes when we teach through that, we'll pop over to Jonah or whoever, especially Haggai and Zechariah. I think that one's really common. I know I just did that recently. But yeah, they read it differently. But again, we've talked about this before with some of the other books. The order is different in the Hebrew system than in the Protestant Bible, and I mean, there's reasons for that. Because the law, the prophets, and the wisdom, right? Basically, and they kind of, like we would say Daniel's a prophet. I think they have Daniel and wisdom, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So
writings.
They just the writing.
The
The
writings
That's,
is the
that's the term I was
yeah.
looking for. The writings.
It's much more all encompassing
Yeah,
than
much
our
broader
category. Yeah.
yeah. It's interesting to think about it that way. But yeah, so here we have the 12, and again, we're not going to talk about each one of them, but you know what we can say about all of them? God comes in, has somebody, there's judgment to be had. Sometimes they repent, and then he always leaves the little window open. There's always going to be a future.
Yeah. Which is everything that we saw in the major prophets just condensed down.
Right.
So all of the themes we talked about before, all of the, even, we talked about some of the odd visuals that Ezekiel was called to do, like Hosea is called to do something kind of odd.
Right.
And so all of the elements from the major prophets are in this collection of smaller prophets, but you get it sort of in short bursts.
Right.
Which is kind of a unique way to get this information.
I don't know if this is for sure, but it's kind of like, yes, repeating the same stories in a much smaller way. It probably helps with remembering.
Okay, yeah.
I would think.
Yeah.
You can't remember all of Isaiah. You can remember the big themes. You can remember Jonah.
Sure.
His story's pretty short and simple, but it captures all those same major themes.
Yeah. So, I don't know if this will be helpful or not, but some of this is helpful to me.
Let's do it anyway.
So, there are a couple of ways that maybe we can categorize these books that might just be helpful. I'm not expecting people to take furious notes on this and remember all this, but just to know that these categories exist, so that when you go back through and read them, maybe you can look for them. One way we can categorize these books is based on who they were written to, which is helpful. So several of these minor prophets were written to the northern kingdom of Israel.
Right.
Others were written to the people of Judah, and maybe we'd even lump in like the people who returned after the captivity.
Right.
And there's a few that are written to the nations,
right.
like other people groups that aren't Israelites. And so that's sort of something to look for, maybe, as you're reading these, is
definitely need to be looking at who this is.
Who's receiving this, right? So, for instance, Jonah is an example of one who was not written to. I mean, the message is there's a lot there for Jonah, who is an Israelite, but his message as a prophet is to the Ninevites, the Assyrians,
right.
and so.
But isn't Jonah the real story, right? The message to Jonah seems to be the real story.
Yeah.
Jonah said, "What? Repent, or you're going to be destroyed." I've heard preachers say he had the shortest message and the most success, maybe.
Yeah,
but
8 words.
I don't think the message is the point, right?
Right.
Jonah, the lesson to Jonah is the point, which is really fascinating.
Yeah. So we think about, as you're reading these, if you go back through and read them, again, the next time we do this in 6 months from now.
6 months from now.
Think about who they're being written to. That's a helpful sort of indicator.
And they pretty much tell you up front. For the most part.
And then maybe the other way to categorize these is to think about when they were written. So you've got like geography, that's one thing, but then also chronology is another thing to think about. And so you have a group of these, probably the majority of them are written before they go into exile. And then you have a small grouping of them at the end that is written after they come home from exile. The minor prophets, correct me if I'm wrong on this, minor prophets are suspiciously quiet during those years of captivity. Is there?
I hadn't thought about that, but they seem to be very active in the split kingdom period.
Right.
And then they stop until the return.
Until they return. And there's a few of these minor prophets that sort of encourage the rebuilding of the temple, and the walls, and things like that. So a couple of ways just to categorize them. A couple things to think about as you go read. Now, obviously, you can take a deep dive into any one of these, but that's sort of, you got to get that big picture view of who are they talking to and kind of what's happening.
So you can, again, sort of pull them out, and as you're reading through, like one of these days, we'll do a chronological reading, right? For our,
I think we'd like to, yeah.
That's part of the plan going forward. And so you might read Jonah in context of that part of Kings, and or wherever we'll put it, Habakkuk and all of those, Amos and Hosea. We'll pull them out, kind of read them roughly when they're happening. Of course, there's a lot of overlap, but and that'll be helpful too, I think, to just kind of place them on the timeline. Everybody's seen those timelines, right?
Sure.
Yeah, we've got one around here somewhere. I don't know if it has quite all of that on here.
Well, and there are some that are more challenging to parse out than others. Like some are very clear. It's this king that he's writing during. Some you kind of have to guess a little bit.
Think Joel's one of those that we're kind of not necessarily,
depending on what the locust is, Hold debates
but
about
for
that.
the most part, again, we get the signposts that tell us where they belong. But again, they all kind of say the same thing. There's judgment. It might be on Israel, it might be on Judah, as you said, it might be on some of these other nations, it might be on Assyria, Egypt, Edom, all the kind of Moab, all the kind of usual suspects show up in a lot of these. And then there's judgment and devastation, but there's always this other sort of abundance language where something good's going to come out of this. There's still something coming. There's still something out there. I still think that's, when I teach that, and usually we've always taught those as a group, like that's, you kind of see that. It's like reading the Psalms. You see this sort of pattern every time.
Yeah. Okay. I feel like we've overviewed it well.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. What is your favorite minor prophet?
That's a tough one. I'm not sure I'm prepared to answer that.
I didn't prep you for this. This is off the cuff.
I mean, who doesn't like Jonah? But
is that too easy?
I mean,
a gimme?
But I don't know. Like Hosea's just crazy, right? Like go marry a prostitute, knowing she's gonna prostitute herself, but because this is what Israel's doing. Like that's something. I don't know.
Go marry a prostitute who's gonna do that, and then take her back, and then name your kids all kinds of wild things that
I don't know. What about you? What's you must have one, or you would.
Well, I actually don't know that I do. My default answer when these kind of questions are asked is whichever one I'm studying at the time, right? So that's the.
But I mean, there's things like that pop out of certain ones, like Malachi, right?
Sure.
Like, give your governor this and see what happens.
Yeah.
Right? God talking about how they're cheating him, they're robbing his temple.
Yeah.
That kind of thing, and of course Jonah, and again, but some of them like you hardly ever read. You hardly ever read Obadiah.
Sure.
Or Joel stands out, I guess, because it's quoted in Acts chapter 2 in particular. Mm-hmm. Habakkuk is the one who sort of argues with God or complains to God a little bit, I guess.
Well, and a handful. You mentioned Joel. Zechariah shows up in the New Testament a couple times.
Yeah.
I think we get like the riding in the donkey, that whole scene at the triumphal entries in Zechariah. Yeah. So there's a couple of interesting things tidbits that just sort of pop up out of these books.
Zechariah's got a little of that apocalyptic kind of feel to it also.
It does. Kind of like Daniel. Kind of like Ezekiel.
Yeah, but he's one of the or during the temple rebuilding when they kind of paused on everything. Right. To get them going.
I will say, we've mentioned this one several times because it is so many people's favorite story or a memorable story. I think I was much older in life when I realized just how powerful a story Jonah is, because you hear the storybook story and it never quite gets to the end of the story. And I had the opportunity to teach Jonah once and was floored with how deep it is and how, I guess pun intended. Anyway, but it's
down, and then down.
It's
some
poetic.
More, right?
It's poetic. It's full of. I mean, it's a literary masterpiece.
Every kid remembers is it a whale or a fish?
It's a big fish.
Doesn't matter.
I think. I don't know.
Every kid remembers that, and that's crazy. It always makes me think of Pinocchio.
Absolutely.
Pinocchio obviously came at least partly from that.
It seems like
so much literature comes from the Bible.
Yeah.
So many of these allusions and things, like from Shakespeare and Chaucer and all these others. Probably even the Russians.
But I was so hoping you would bring up the Russian literature.
Tell because I can't understand it. I figured, for the last Old Testament thing, I should bring up Russian literature one last time. Hopefully, one last time. Jonah. I mean, I've heard entire gospel meetings about Jonah. I don't think I've heard entire gospel meetings about any of the other minor prophets.
Yeah. Well, and that says something about Jonah. There is a lot in Jonah, but maybe the challenge there is for us to recognize that these other books are equally as deep if we would just give them the time.
Right. Right.
And I'm saying that recognizing that I have fallen short in that respect, but I think there's more here to be gleaned.
Well, like I other than like a Bible reading, I can't remember the last time I've read most of these books. I taught it. It's been a few years since I taught through these books. Rarely do they pop up in a sermon or another Bible class. Most of them. Malachi maybe more, and Joel maybe more often than all the others put together. I would guess.
I know some of the ladies from our church have recently been doing a study on the minor prophets,
right.
Which has been I
kind of wish I
great.
Could sit in.
And I think based on what I've heard, it's gone well. But what the experience typically is, I think for most churches, is they will study the minor prophets over the course of a quarter, and it will be 1 week on this, 1 week on the next, and it doesn't give you that chance to dive deeply. And so,
well, since you're in charge of our Bible curriculum, Andrew, maybe that's something we do.
Let's do it. Let's dive into the minor prophets. I need it.
Let's spend 3 years on the minor prophets. And
3 years on the minor prophets.
17 weeks on Obadiah.
Why don't we drop a comment and see if y'all want to hear Mike talk about Obadiah for?
Hey, I'm doing 17 weeks on Psalm 23.
It'll be great
in the fall.
It'll be great.
I think so. I hope so.
I do too, because that's a lot of commitment. If it's not,
if only Ken were here.
Oh my!
Since this was his idea.
Yes. Yes.
So, is there any other one or something out of any of these that stand out? And again, we're probably up against it, but anything else that you just
what else stands out?
What do we got to talk about?
I don't know. My mind is racing in about 12 different directions right now, trying to think about all the things we've hit on. Some of the big
really
ones.
is the last book of the Old Testament, right?
Sure.
So it's in the right place.
Yeah. Well, maybe that. I don't know if this. Am I reading your mind? Are we having a moment?
Probably.
Elijah's coming. That's where the Old Testament ends.
Yeah.
Elijah's coming, which is a really strange place to end, because Elijah died a long time ago.
Except Elijah's coming.
He's coming, and that's going to be. There's a lot of things to look forward to in the Old Testament. We talked last week about the statues, the kingdoms, the timestamps in Daniel. So there's a lot of things that the Jews are looking forward to. But you close the Old Testament and you say, what was that about? And all of a sudden you're looking for some crazy guy who's walking around the wilderness like Elijah did. And you got to wait till 400 years goes by to find out who it is.
Could you imagine sort of living in that era and being a student of the scripture to whatever degree, or being taught this, in synagogue and so on, and them saying, well, but being in like it's 100 years after this, and well, we're in that second, third kingdom, and there's still another one. We're not sure exactly what it looks like, and you're like, right, and then okay, we think we're in that last kingdom, and so we're looking around that just now we're looking for the Lord to return, and we just want to get there.
Yeah.
But they were looking for him to show up in the first place, and
probably
do things that they didn't understand. We have the hindsight. They didn't see it. I think we need to remember that just as we wrap this up. They had a certain viewpoint, and they were looking for him. It didn't match up quite with their expectations for whatever reason. But this has been the intent of God to get to this place on purpose. This was not an accident. The Old Testament was not an accident. The church was not an accident. This is all part of the plan. And so I think that's part of why we get these visions, to see the plan moving forward, to see that it is moving forward, even in the midst of captivity where Daniel was.
Yeah. Malachi and Haggai and Zechariah were there after the temple was built, and there's still, I think we've talked about this to some degree, there's still something lacking. It's not the fulfillment of that plan yet, and so there's this lingering. The Old Testament has a really unsatisfying ending. It just left
feels
hanging.
like it peters out, right? It just kind of, they rebuilt the temple.
Yeah.
But, little plug for our gospel meeting we're in last week. And he's talking about that exact point, that wasn't the fulfillment. I think it was the second night, wasn't it? Maybe it was the first night.
Yep. Yeah.
That wasn't the fulfillment, because it just was kind of like, wah, 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 it got built, but he was talking about the glory of the Lord, the presence of the Lord never really occurred, and so they're still looking for that.
Yeah.
And you see that in Jesus.
Yeah. So that's what we're looking forward to, and fortunately we don't have to wait 400 years for that. We get to turn the page tomorrow night and start reading in Matthew, and we'll see right away that John the Baptist comes on the scene.
Yep. I think as videos, people should expect we're going to have to just do a lot of big bird's eye stuff. Yeah. We have a lot of books to cover in 3 weeks. So all 4 Gospels, I think.
Probably in 1 week. We'll try to break it up in reasonable amounts, but it's going to be very overview. And so read along with us, guys.
But we'll be back next year to do it again.
Next year. We ought to do it in July.
Read the whole thing in July?
Read the whole thing in July to December.
We're going to start again in July.
Let's do it again.
I know we're not there yet, but let's just plug the next the next 6 months.
Yeah.
Pick a different version.
Sure.
Listen to it instead of read it, or read it instead do something different. But
yeah, and let us know in the comments what you're going to do different. We want to know what y'all are doing and how we can be most helpful and encouraging to you in that journey. So, while you're making a comment, letting us know what you're doing, go ahead and push that little thumbs up button. I think that likes the video.
That likes the video.
And then there's like a little bell button, and that'll subscribe you to the channel. And then I think there's a little arrow button, and that'll share it to your friends.
That's it.
Do all those buttons.
You're good.
Am I doing pretty good?
You're good.
Look at that. Until next time, I guess we got to leave it there.
All right.
Until next time,
Thanks
we'll
for your
talk to you later,
attention.
guys. Appreciate you.